Hi everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you this interesting way of using your coloured fine liners to actually colour in a drawing and how to create this squiggle style colouring. So the materials you're going to be needing for this project are fine liners. I'm using the Staedtler Triplus fine liners, and these are coloured pens that have a very fine tip. It doesn't say actually on the pen what size nib this is, but I would say it's 0.4 or 0.3, so very small. I also have here some Faber-Castell grip pens. Again, these are just coloured, almost like coloured felt tip pens that have a very thin nib on them. You can use any brand of fine liner you want. Any one will work well for this project. Now normally these types of fine liners are used for writing or for making notes or for lining, and a lot of people use them in their journals and diaries and things. Any paper would work well for this project. I'm using 300-gram cardstock, which has a colouring page printed out onto it, and there'll be an Etsy link in the description box below if you want to colour this image. Any sort of paper will work well for this. I feel that a glossy cardstock or a Bristol board works the best, but any paper and any fine liners will work, so it doesn't have to be this brand. So the first thing I'm going to do is gather up all my pens and just separate them into colour families, so I can just pick the colours that I want to use to colour in my image here. So just really quickly, basic colour families. Got some blues here, we have a turquoise, some greens, then we got yellow, orange, red, then into pinks, purple, browns, grey, and then black. So this is the sort of a rainbow-ish colour spectrum. And so now, in order to colour my image, now I am colouring a pattern image, but I think working with a limited colour palette works really well for whatever type of image you're colouring, whether it's you know, a person or a landscape or whatever sort of image you're colouring with this technique. I would suggest sticking to 5 or 6 colours. I'm going to pick six today to colour this one. I'm going to eliminate the black, because I don't think I'm going to want black in this image. The line art of the pattern that I'm colouring is in brown, so I think if I use the black it will be too dark. You can get this colouring page in black as well. I just printed out the brown line art option just to make something a little different today. Okay, so I'm going to start by just picking one colour out. I'm going to start with this turquoise. I'm just going to test it out. Okay, so starting with this turquoise colour, that's my first colour, and then to go with it I'm going to pick this nice blue here. Yes, and I'm testing the colours just to make sure that they're separate enough and just to see what the shade is. So now I've got those two. Then I'm going to pick the purple, and the purple is a lot darker than it looks on the lid, so that's why it's good to test out your colours, just to check the actual colour before you put them on your piece. I think I'm going to add a green into that. Let me see if this one looks nice. Oh yes, that will look nice because it will help to just brighten up the slightly darker colours there. So that's 4 colours. And now I need a much darker colour really as well. So I guess I could use this dark blue. That's a lot darker. So I could use that, but then it will make the colour palette very blue. Let me see if I can use this, how this colour comes out. Oh no, that one looks really nice. Okay, so I think I'm going to definitely take that pink. And I could use a grey because it's often good to have a neutral colour. Yes, I'm going to use the grey. So at the moment I've got these colours, so that's 6 colours there. I think I'm going to start with the border. So I'm going to take the darkest colour, which is the purple. And normally when I colour the borders of these sorts of images, I always colour the border in my darkest colour because it frames the image. I'm just going to show you slightly closer up the movements that I'm doing. It might be a bit hard to see exactly. If I just grab one of my markers perhaps, just to show you, Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going like this on the paper, just making these kind of random squiggle movements all overlapping each other, but making sure that the background's showing through. Another tip though when working is that to make sure that your movements are close to each other. You don't want to go like that and leave too much white space. They want to be close to each other, not so close that there's no white coming through, but not so far apart that there's too much white, because it looks much more detailed. You want it to look really intricate and detailed, and so in order to do that you need to take your time and just make loads and loads of these little squiggle motions. I'm not quite sure what to call this. I guess you could call it just kind of random doodles, and I'm going to go along like this and just keep going. So I'm going to place blue here, blue there, and then blue at the top here, and then I will repeat those colours in the same place on that side. And now I'm going to do down here on this other one as well, and this technique is a bit more time consuming than just simply colouring, but it's not that much more time consuming. You know, it looks more complicated than it is, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like this technique, is that the finished piece with all the little flecks of white showing through the colour, and you can see all the hundreds of little squiggle lines, it makes the colouring look, you know, it makes it look much more complicated than it really is, because all you're doing is sitting here and making these little tiny swirls. But I think it can look really, really effective, and it's not that time consuming. Okay, you know, you have to be patient when you're doing it, and you have to make, you know, all these little tiny swirls, but it's actually pretty therapeutic and relaxing, I think, to sit here and just sort of listen to some music or watch a video and just kind of just make all these little swirls. Now I'm going to add in another colour, and I'm going to take the green, and I'm going to put the green in with the turquoise. So the green's going to be the background colour for this fan, and I'm just going to colour in these little background portions. And one of the other really, I think, effective things about this colouring style is that or at least for me, I really like the complicated sort of textured look that it gives it, because of the white of the background. Now you could do this colouring technique on coloured paper, but I think doing it on white paper is the most effective, because of the little flecks of white that come through, and it gives the whole thing a really textured appearance. I really like white in pieces, either with highlights or as an outline, or just as an actual colour. I often actually use white as a colour on my colour palettes. And I really like this technique because you can fill an entire page full of colour, but it doesn't, the colours don't overpower each other because of all these little white flecks that are coming through. And I just think it's just kind of quite unusual and an interesting way to apply colour. I said in the beginning of the video that you could use any paper for this, and you can use any paper, but I think the Fineliners go particularly well on a glossy cardstock, because they slide easily over the surface. I think if you were using a watercolor paper or a paper that has more tooth to it, then I think you wouldn't get such a smooth line. And so, you know, a Bristol board would work well, or, you know, something like that, just a nice glossy cardstock. And I like colouring on cardstock, even though I could colour with these on printer paper, because they're so, you know, I'm not saturating the colour, I'm not doing any blending, I'm not adding water, I'm not doing anything like that, but I just like to colour on a thicker piece of paper. It makes the finished piece feel a lot nicer, I think. One of the things that I think it's really important to do when colouring pieces like this, pattern pieces, or just any piece, you know, whether it's where you're drawing characters or you're doing landscapes or whatever, is to evenly distribute the colours for instance, like with this piece with the border colour, it's very easy to forget that the border colour also needs to be incorporated a little bit into the rest of the piece. So I'm using it to do these diamonds here. I also put it on the circles here and then in this little area here, just to because otherwise the border will stand out too much, if you see what I mean. I think all the colours need to be evenly distributed. I think it makes the piece look much more cohesive at the end. So now I'm using the grey to colour in the rest of these little diamonds on the fan here. And the reason why the grey is such an important colour, even though it's not, I haven't used it yet in any of the main spaces, the reason why the grey is important is because it's like the filler colour. When I set up my colour palettes, I normally do 5 main colours and then I have one colour that I may not use so much, but it doesn't matter if I use it a lot or not at all, because it's like it's a neutral tone. It's a beige or a grey or a very light yellow, something that is not very noticeable compared to the other colours. So something that is much lighter in tone, much more muted. And I think it just really helps because you can use that colour to fill in, just to fill in these places where you don't want to put one of the other main colours, because it would stand out too much or it would destroy the colour balance. And another tip for when you're doing this sort of colouring is not to press too hard, because these are fine liners. If you want any pen, you can push the nib in, but particularly with these, if you press too hard and you're kind of going, pressing really hard with the pen, you will push the nib in and blunt your pen. So you don't want to do that. You want to go carefully and you can go quickly, but just gently. So don't press down too hard with the pen. Okay, so the page is done. Now I'm going to show you the close-up that I promised. And as you can see, there are all the hundreds and thousands of tiny little squiggles and lines, and I just think this looks really cool. Now obviously it's going to be personal preference whether you like this style of colouring or not, but I just think it's just really fun. It may not be for everyone because it does take a little bit longer, but I do think it's worth it. So that is the fans colouring page, coloured with the fine liners, and I just think this is a really interesting way to use your fine liners as well, because I know a lot of you may have these, and if you don't have these, the fine liners are really useful for writing and doing all sorts of things with, but you can also create these this fun colouring technique using them. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to subscribe if you'd like to see more. I post a colouring tutorial every Saturday and an art journal or mixed media DIY video every Thursday. I hope you all have a wonderful week.